Hello everybody, welcome to this video. I hope you're all doing well. Yes, I am perfectly aware that a few days ago I put up a video saying that I won't be on YouTube for a while, and here I am. But this is a special occasion and I thought this video would be quite worthwhile and interesting to do. If you've clicked on this video on purpose, then you'll be aware that Paul McCartney has recently released his latest album entitled Egypt Station. I say recently, for me it was yesterday. I'm filming this on the 8th of September. But obviously, I don't know when this will go up. So recently, Paul McCartney has released his latest solo album entitled Egypt Station. And I don't generally do album reviews. I used to, but they were very in-depth and took ages to do. But I feel like I just want to talk about this album for a little bit. So yeah, Egypt Station. It's the first album that he's released in 5 years, and it's the first album he's actually released since I've been interested. I have to admit to not being a massive fan of the solo Beatles stuff. I absolutely adore the Beatles, as the giant apple in the background tells you. After this split, I mean obviously I wasn't alive, but after this split I don't take too much notice. I have albums of theirs, I listen to music of theirs from that time, but personally I always found the Beatles a lot more interesting than their solo work. I dip in and out occasionally, but the Beatles are the band that sort of got me into music, and I got into the Beatles in around 2014-15, so by that time Paul had already released New, which for a lot of people I know in the VC sort of was their introduction to his solo material. For me though, this is the first album he has released since I have personally been interested in him, interested in music, interested in his music. So for me it's kind of a special one, and it's kind of a special one in a lot of other ways as well, because I don't think I've ever seen an album polarise people so quickly. So leading up to the album's release, we had 3 singles. We had the double A side I Don't Know and Come On To Me, and then we later had the release of For You. And it was the latter track that seemed to rub a lot of people up the wrong way. So what I'm going to do in this video, it's not a review by any means, you know, if I'm going to review this album, I'll do it a long time in the future when I'm fully familiar with it. I've listened to it twice now, so I'm familiar enough to talk about the tracks and, you know, to give first impressions and opinions. I'm not going to talk about what any of the songs mean or go into any detail like that, because it's early days and I haven't fully absorbed everything yet, but this is just basically a first impressions video. I'm going to start out with a bit of an overview, what I think of the album, a couple of interesting bits. I'm going to go through track by track, just give a little bit of information, a little bit of my feelings on it, and then I'm going to do a little summary at the end. So by all means, if you haven't heard the album, if you have heard the album, sit back and enjoy this video. I'm not going to spoil anything, don't worry, I'm not going to give any plot spoilers away for the album. But yeah, this is just my basic first thoughts on the album, and I've made this video just because I think it's an interesting album to talk about, given a lot of the response it's got from people. So, my first listen, I have to be honest, I wasn't fully focused on it. I was on my way to work, I was on the bus, I had my headphones in. It had obviously just been released, it was on the day of release, and I listened to it on Spotify. I know, sue me, I don't have the money to get the vinyl yet. So I listened to it on the bus on the way to work, and I timed it perfectly. I left the house as it started and I arrived at work as it finished, so, you know, good stuff. But then I also gave it a listen when I got back from work, and I gave it more of a sit-down listen to pay a bit more attention. I have to say, I was very impressed immediately, because a lot of times it will take me a few listens to get into an album. You know, a lot of songs I'll not quite get until I've heard it 4 or 5 times. And the singles leading up to the album, I have to say they caught my attention pretty quickly. I thought they were interesting, and the same is true of the album. You know, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't fully focused on the music on my way to work, but it had me from the get-go. You know, I don't know whether it's just because it's Paul McCartney's first album since I've been interested, but, you know, I was very excited and eager to hear what the next song would sound like and what he had to say and everything like that. And that's kind of rare that an album does that for me, and I'm not going to lie, you know, it's probably just because it's Paul McCartney that it's had that effect on me. But, you know, good impressions first thing. I have to admit that the singles were a very interesting choice of singles. There's 16 tracks on the album, I think there's 18 on the special edition, it's got a couple of bonus tracks. And 3 singles were released, and I don't know whether they were good choices or not. I think in terms of publicity they were very good, because they sort of got people talking about the songs and the upcoming album and everything. And that's great, but I think having listened to the album, a couple of the songs, or in fact a lot of the other songs, would have got a more positive response had they been put out first. And, you know, it depends what he was going for. If he was going for publicity and coverage, which, you know, let's be honest, he's a musician, that's what they all want. So, you know, good on him, it worked. Personally though, I would have liked to have seen one of the more conventional tracks released as a single, because, you know, it sort of gave people the impression that the whole album was going to be this really strange, out there thing, and it's really not. It's, you know, just a couple of songs really stand out as being like, oh, that doesn't sound like Paul McCartney. But yeah, I think it was an interesting choice of singles, not necessarily good or bad, but that's just one of the first things that stood out to me. I think he maybe could have chosen different songs and got a different response from people. Like I said earlier, it's sort of polarised people. I think people either really like this album or really dislike this album. There's not many people I've come across on online reviews and things who are sort of lukewarm on it. Most people, like I say, either seem to be on one side or the other. And again, I'm going to blame the singles. I think that if you dislike the songs and everything, please don't feel offended by anything I'm going to say, but this is the perspective I've got from reading Facebook comments and things like that. I think a lot of the people who disliked the singles and consequently are very apprehensive about the album are very die-hard Beatles fans. Now, I adore the Beatles, but I think a lot of these people would prefer him to just be doing I Want to Hold Your Hand Part 2. Do you know, I think a lot of them would want him to be the innocent Paul that you saw back in the 60s, the early 60s anyway. And he's not like that, you know. I mean, you have to look at the Beatles stuff and think that even for back then, we look back on it now and think, wow, how innovative. But back then there will have been people who thought a lot of the things they were doing was sacrilege, you know, putting backwards guitars and everything on tracks. You can't do that, but they did. And, you know, he's always been like that. They all were quite innovative and, you know, experimental. And I personally think it's great to see that he's carrying that on. You know, I don't like to see artists when they grow old to just be sort of stuck in a rut of performing the hits and that's about it. You know, the albums aren't too interesting. But I mean, one thing you've got to give Paul is that recently his albums have been really, really stellar. You know, you've had Chaos and Creation, you've had New. New in particular was very, very, you know, a lot of people at his age would have sort of gone for a toned down, nice acoustic thing. With New and with this, he's totally sort of not done that. He's gone very over the top on the production and the sound. And I think that's great. But a couple of the singles were very like that. You know, they got a reaction from people because it's not just him singing love songs, it's him singing sort of love songs, you know, like there's a lot of raunchiness in a couple of the songs. And that sparked a lot of people's negative reactions. And I honestly think that if you are one of the people who didn't like the singles, I wouldn't let that reflect on the whole album. The whole album is not like that. Just try and go into it with an open mind. I understand that's easier said than done because I kind of like the singles, but yeah, that would be my main piece of advice for this album, is if you haven't heard it yet, definitely go into it with an open mind because there's a lot of variety on here and really there is something for everyone. The production is another thing that stands out. It is very modern production, and again, a lot of people didn't seem to like that, and I think it's the same sort of people. Again, please don't be upset or offended if I'm saying anything that, you know, if it relates to you that you didn't like the singles. I'm not saying this as a generalisation. But from my perspective and the things I've seen, a lot of people sort of want the old Paul back, and that just isn't going to happen. But I think it would work the other way as well. I think if he'd gone back to his old style, a lot of people would have criticised him for not changing and not progressing. And yeah, that's a silly thing to say to a man who's been making music for 56 years or something like that, and he's been progressing and changing all the time. But you know what some people are like, you know, they'll pick on anything. And if he had stayed the same as, you know, some of his 80s albums, or if he'd done something safe, he would have been criticised for that. It's, you know, you can't please everyone, and it just turns out that he wanted to do something a little bit different and weird, as opposed to going back to his old style, which I think a lot of people would have kind of liked in a way. Just before I actually go through track by track and my opinions and things, I just want to say that overall I really like the album. It's weird to give a summary at the start of the video, but I feel like it fits. Yeah, I really like the album. I think maybe 16 songs, a couple of the songs are like 40 seconds long, so it's really 14 songs. Maybe a little bit long, maybe that's just me not liking a couple of tracks and thinking they could be taken out or even just replaced with a couple of other songs. My main criticism though is just that, you know, I could do without a couple of songs, but if that's my main criticism, then really that's a positive review, isn't it? I really like this album. So yeah, I'm going to go through track by track now. It's not going to take long, he says, looking at how long he's been filming already. Just give quick thoughts, things like that, little bits of information that I've picked up from other people. And yeah, think of it more of like an album summary than it is an album review. So we start off with one of the shorter songs, as I mentioned earlier. It's about 40 seconds long. It's called Opening Station. And this is going to start out negative. It's pleasant, it's 40 seconds, so you can't really complain, but it's unnecessary, in my opinion. I think it was put there along with a similar track later on. That it's sort of put there to make the album title make sense. As far as I know, the album title is based off a painting that Paul did. I don't think the album artwork is that painting, but it's just a title that he liked. And I feel like he had this idea that it was a journey where you had a station at the start and a station at the end. Personally, though, it's a little bit... This is going to ruffle some people. It's a little bit like Sgt. Pepper, in that if it's a concept album, it's not actually a great one, in my opinion. Sgt. Pepper's a fantastic album. I just always thought that the concept wasn't strong. You know, you sort of had the first couple of songs that were relevant, and then the rest of it was just sort of songs that were completely unrelated. Then they went, oh yeah, we're supposed to be doing that thing, and then they put the reprise at the end to go, hey, we've just performed a show. I love that album, but that's just how I feel about the concept. And it's similar with this. I feel like the station songs, as I will call them, are pleasant enough, they're short enough that you can't really whinge about them, but a bit unnecessary. That's it, really. That's all there is to say. It's just sort of an introduction to the album, but as much as it's nice, I feel like it could have gone in straight away with the first proper song. The first proper song being I Don't Know, which was the first single released, technically, alongside Come On To Me. And this is my favourite of the singles released from the album. My favourite of the three. It's a piano ballad. It's got quite a strange structure, this album. It sort of doesn't do the traditional starting off with a rocker and then, going slow, then a bit of a rocker, then slow. It sort of does the opposite in a way. It starts slow and then progressively gets rockier as it goes along. But yeah, I think it's a really nice start. Like I say, I think it could have opened the album. The piano work on this is really, really great. The melody is fantastic, particularly when he sings "What am I doing wrong? I don't know." That little bit, I don't know why. I just really like that melody. I think it's a very pleasant song. It's very nice. I don't really have too much to complain about. It's sort of like one of his traditional sounding songs with modern production. You can hear it when the drums come in. He says, "I've got crows at my window," and then the drums come in, and that's when the modern production takes over. But it works. I like this song. I think it's a cool little opener that sets it up well. And next up, track 2, we have the flip side of that single, which is Come On To Me, which is one of the songs that a lot of people weren't too keen on. I didn't like it too much at first. I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it or anything. I just thought it was a pretty standard song. My main criticism with this song was that it was quite strange to hear a man his age talking in that way. But at this point in his life, he's 76? Don't tell him what sort of music to make. He's more than earned his right to make whatever sort of music he wants. He's one of the few who's, has got like a right to do what he wants. So if he wants to sing about things like that, then fair play. I think that the lyrics are maybe a bit repetitive. A bit strange to hear coming from Paul, but hey ho, it's his song. Melodically, I think this is where the song stands out. I think the lyrics maybe aren't the what's the word? I don't know. The strongest part of the song, anyway. The strongest part of the song is the melody and the instrumentation. You get a properly rocky guitar riff to open it. The drums really carry this song. I did that to represent drums. The drums have got a proper sort of boom, psh, boom, like that. It carries the song. It's got a really good tempo to it. And it's a sing-along one. It's not one that I'd probably listen to on its own, but when it comes on, it's very, very enjoyable in my opinion. So yeah, it's grown on me a bit. It's not my favourite, and it's one of the songs that I maybe wouldn't have chosen as a single for him. But it's fair. It's good. So the next song, track 4, technically, is a song that not many people have picked up on. Personally, though, when I first heard it, I thought this was a stroke of genius. You've just come off Come On To Me, which is this very sexualised, very hard rocking song. A lot of people went,
oh, he's just trying to please the kids, by being sexy.
And then you break into this really beautiful acoustic ballad called Happy With You, where he says, I used to get stoned, I used to get wasted, now I don't because I'm happy with you. It's like, yeah, how raucous of you, Paul. How dare you be happy with someone and, better yourself. I really like that. It's possibly my favourite song on the album. It's just a really sweet song. It's got a fantastic melody. I think it might have some drums in. It's like I say, I heard it yesterday. But it's mainly just acoustic guitar and Paul. Nice little riff. I think it's very innocent, but it's also very retrospective at the same time. You know, he's saying, I used to do a lot of these things, but now I don't, because I don't need to, because I've got happiness with you. And I think it's a really, really beautiful song, and I think it's a perfect follow-up to Come On To Me. It's like the polar opposite, but it really works. So the next track is called Who Cares, and I think this is possibly the most relevant song on the album when it comes to Paul himself and a lot of the reception that this album and a couple of the singles specifically have got. It's basically about, you know, being bullied and how really, as much as it might hurt, it doesn't matter, you know, what people say about you as long as you know you're good, sort of thing. It's got a great sort of... It's not an anti-bullying message as such, it's just a message that says bullies are dicks and don't matter, basically. First thing that stood out to me, in fact, on this, you get a sort of really cool guitar feedback intro, which I like, and then it breaks into the actual riff, which the second it started, I thought of Mark Bolan and T-Rex. I thought that riff, if you take the words out, just listen to the music in the intro, it's very, very T-Rex. And I really like T-Rex, sort of, you know, understated little guitar twiddles and riffs and things. Really good stuff. Sorry, I've just got my notes down here and there's a lot to remember. The song's got a really, really good message. It's very, very catchy. Bit upbeat, you know, compared to the previous song. And I say it's relevant because he's basically saying, you know, who cares what people say as long as you're happy. And you had all these people going, Paul, you're a disgrace for making music like this. And there he's just going, yeah, I'm going to put this as track 3 on the album. I'm going to write this. I'm going to sing about this. I think he's singing about sort of his own experience in a way, but he's generalising out to anyone who's been a victim of bullying, you know, online harassment, things like that. I think that's very, very relevant and a great message to be singing about. So, yeah, Who Cares is really holding up this album, I think. It's gone really, really strong for the first 5 or 6 songs, I think we're at. 5 songs in, yeah. So, as much as the first one's a bit unnecessary, I can't whinge about it. The first 5 songs, I think, are pretty, pretty solid. And next up, we have the song For You. And a lot of people hate this song, like, really detest this song. And I just think it's funny. Like, I'm not going to go... Do I go into the controversy? I'm going to go into the controversy. The song is titled For You. F-U-H-U. You know that already. And the lyric is For You. Because he's from Liverpool, and that's the way he says it, for you. I'm not from Liverpool, I'm from the north of England, and I wouldn't say for you. I say, you know, I want it for you. Like, that's just how I say it, so I don't know if I just had a bit of a head start going into this song, I don't know. But a lot of people think that the way he sings it, it's quite fast, sounds like, I just want to fuck you. Which... I honestly wouldn't put it past him at this point, writing stuff like that after stuff like Come On To Me, but, you know, it's not that, it's I just want it for you. Sorted. It says it on the lyrics on the inner sleeve and everything, as far as I'm aware. I don't own the vinyl yet. As far as I'm aware, this song is the only song that was sort of co-written and co-produced. I think most if not all of the other stuff was McCartney by himself, when it comes to writing and producing, but this one was co-written and produced by a guy called Ryan Tedder, who is a pretty well-known guy when it comes to modern pop music. He writes a lot of songs for people, he produces a lot of songs for people. Kelly Clarkson, I believe, wrote a song basically telling him to fuck off, which, you know, good on her. And I think it shows that this guy who helped with this song is very prolific. Is prolific the right word? When it comes to modern pop music, because it is, you know, maybe it's the most traditionally, it's the most conventional modern pop sounding song on the album. You know, there's a lot of overproduction and everything on it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Personally, I think, again, this single maybe wasn't the best choice, although this is the one that got the most people talking, so maybe it was, I don't know. Overall, I think the song is, it's not fantastic, it's lyrically a bit strange. I was going to say weak, I don't think it's lyrically weak, I just think it could have been a bit better than it is. But as much as I say that, it's very catchy. I don't gripe on modern pop as much as a lot of other people do. You know, I don't listen to modern pop. But if people enjoy it, then fair play. But, you know, I can see where people are coming from. It does sound very modern very modern pop, if that's a genre. You know what I'm saying. Yeah, it's got a modern pop sound to it, but it's got an unmistakably McCartney touch to it. Is the For You thing intentional? I think it probably is. I think he intentionally made it sound like he was saying fuck you. And you know what? Just have a sense of humour about it. You know, I mean, you listen to some of the absolute filth that the Beatles were singing about in there, you know, clever little innuendos and things like that, and fish and finger pies and stuff. It's really not much different. In fact, it's pretty much the same. You know, he's saying something, but there's another implied meaning in there. And you know, it's a strange song. It's not a standout for me. And you know, I have a feeling that Ryan Tedder was maybe the guy who pushed this out as a single to say, you know, I'm the guy who does the modern pop. I can make this chart worthy and stuff like that. But that's not a criticism. That's just sort of how the music industry is. And yeah, the song overall is all right, but not maybe a standout. Catchy enough, but yeah. Next up is a song called Confidant, which is a song. I get songs like this occasionally, whereas when I find out the meaning of the song, I suddenly enjoy it a little bit more. My first listen, I thought it was pleasant, but maybe forgettable. You know, it was one of those where I got to work and I looked back on the songs, and I looked at Confidant and thought, oh, how did that one go? You know, it was one of those where I'd listen to it with the album, but not necessarily in isolation. And it sounds like he's singing about an old friend, which, you know, is fairly standard song material. But if you've watched the McCartney videos on YouTube where... is it called Words Between the Music or something? He basically has uploaded videos talking for like a minute or so about each song. And he said it was like a song to the guitar, because it sounds in the song with no context like he's just singing about a person. But he said, you know, when he makes music, he sort of, you know, lets his feelings out to the guitar, and he tells his guitar all his secrets and things like that. And I think it's a nice meaning for a song. It's a little bit of a twist on the old friend thing, you know. It's not just talking about a person, it's talking about a physical object, and one that he uses to make his music. So yeah, it's a strangely personal song, but it's enjoyable. You know, it's an enjoyable listen. Again, maybe not a standout. It's a song that I still am yet to fully appreciate, and you know, that's pretty much it. It's an alright song. I don't mind it. And that sort of vibe continues with the next song. It's called People Want Peace, and yeah, you can sort of, if you haven't heard the album, you sort of know what this song is already. It's a chanty, people want peace sort of thing. And a lot of people say, you know, the idea of doing peace songs is overdone. Is it? Yeah, probably, but if, you know, the message is good, then I don't really think that's a criticism. I think, you know, as long as you're singing about a good thing, you know, that really, you know, it's all that matters. It's sending out good vibes and things. And again, as with the previous two songs, it's catchy, it's fair, it's instrumentally quite nice. The chanty bit is, you know, very singable, but yeah, maybe a bit tired on this idea. Not a standout track. It's not one that, again, I would click on to listen to by itself, but it's perfectly serviceable, it's passable, and it's got a good message, so, you know, not too much to criticise, really. So next up we get to another song that's grown on me, and it is Hand in Hand, which is a sort of really beautiful piano ballad, love song. And yeah, the first time I listened to it, I thought it was, you know, pretty melody, but the vocals, in fact the vocals are still something I'm having trouble with, because it doesn't sound like Paul. He's sort of got this weird sort of singy thing going on, which it's a bit refreshing, because, you know, I mean, his voice on a lot of these songs does sound quite similar. It's either soft and ballady, or it's, you know, a bit rattly and rocky. And this is a little bit different, so it's a bit of a nice change there. But yeah, I'm not too keen on the vocals, but the song itself is absolutely beautiful. It's one of those songs that, you know, you could just, you know, it could put you in the mood for a sad song just by listening to it, if that makes sense. Not that it's a sad song, it's just, you know, one of those songs where the piano is very soft, and it's, you know, it's not upbeat and catchy or anything, it's just pretty. And, you know, that's fine. It's another one that, you know, I'm saying this a lot in the middle portion of this album, it's not one that I would instantly go to, but it's a good song. I do like it. And now we're on to what seems to be a lot of people's favourites. This is the song Dominos. And it's a song that I honestly don't have too much to say about. It's quite long, it's about 5 minutes, and again, I've said, you know, it seems to be my main praise of a lot of the songs is that they're catchy and nicely produced, and that's what this one is. It's a catchy, nicely produced song. It's got a cool little story meaning behind it. But yeah, other than that, not too much else to say. It's another one that's yet to grow on me properly. But I enjoyed listening to it both times. I think it's very fun. You know, the instrumentation is really, really good. You can tell Paul's having a lot of fun with this one. So yeah, it's a great song. I'm yet to fully appreciate the meaning and everything behind it. I'm sure I will as I listen to it more. But first impressions, Dominos is a pretty solid song, but, you know, maybe needs a few more listens. And now we're on to the song Back in Brazil, which is arguably my least favourite, and I seem to see a lot of people saying that similarly. Yeah, it's a very strange song. It's experimental, it's got some chanting in it, it's got some sort of, is it Hammond organ? It sounds a bit like elevator music, but sped up a little bit. So I appreciate the sort of weird vibe the song has. In terms of the song itself, this is one that I could definitely do without on the album. It's not too long or anything, it's just a bit like, skip. I want to skip this one, but I can't. Yeah, the lyrics are the main letdown for me. They're very contrived. You know, it's... What's the lyric? Back in Brazil, there lives a girl who dreams of a far, far better world or something, and it's... I don't know, it reminded me of the song The Other Me of Pipes of Peach, you know, when... It's a great song, but, you know, what's the lyric? Something took a hold of me and tret you like a dustbin lid or something, and it's like, ooh, could you not have come up with something better than that? Yeah, lyrically and in terms of actual meaning, this song is maybe a bit vacuous. So yeah, it's my least favourite. It's not really a song I would look forward to listening to again. Maybe it'll grow on me. But yeah, and I don't know what the hell that chant in the middle means, but it's very annoying. You know, it was only through making notes of the songs that I realised how many times I've written great message, you know, as in the song has a great message, and that's exactly what this next one is. Do It Now, it's called. Initially, it wasn't one that I liked too much, but on a second listen, I appreciated it a lot more. Maybe it's because I listened to him talking about it and how his dad always used to say, do it now, you know, it's a bit like this one, you know, in that, you know, when is there a better moment than now? Yeah, I really like this song. I think the piano work is fantastic. It's a very beautiful song. Great meaning, very motivational. And it's right, I think. You know, you know, whenever I got home from school, I was always doing my homework now, because then it would, you know, get it out of the way for later. But, you know, it depends on the situation, but I think it can relate to a lot of people in that, you know, maybe all holding off something that we should be doing, but we're not, and it's just saying, get it out the way, sort it now, and you don't have to worry about it later. And I think that's a really fab message. So yeah, Do It Now, I think, is maybe one of the, from what I've read, one of the songs that goes a little bit underappreciated, and maybe it's just because it comes after Back in Brazil that I enjoy it so much. But yeah, really, really great song. This next song annoyed me a little bit. It's called Caesar Rock. And again, it's him doing a bit of wordplay, because the actual chorus is She's a Rock. But again, as he said in that little talky thing that he made about the song, he was just having a bit of fun and it turned into Caesar Rock. And it starts off with this really catchy drum intro, and you think, oh yeah, this is going to be catchy. And then after 4 bars, the song totally changes and we never hear those drums again. Yeah, very annoying. Take the drums off. Yeah, it's a very strange song. It's talking about a woman. It's quite rocky. Again, he's put on his quite gritty sounding voice for this one. And the thing that stands out for me in this song is the use of a, what do you call it, like a group, like a chorus of people shouting out like, yeah, and she's a rock and stuff like that, and it, you know, it gives the song a bit of a punch to it. And yeah, it's another one of those songs that's really well produced. I think I enjoy the sound of this song. It's a good follow-up, I think, to Do It Now, in that one was quite slow and ballady and melodic. This one's more upbeat and rock focused, which is there's not actually that many like upbeat rocker songs on here. I think Come On To Me is one of them, Caesar Rock, and then there's one in a couple of songs' time that we hear. But other than that, it's a pretty mellow album, which I think is in contrast to its production. Its production would suggest that it's going to be more upbeat and sort of, I don't know, raunchier than it actually is, if that makes sense. And, you know, it just isn't that at all. The meaning of the song is, you know, as I said, it's talking about a woman, so is it overdone? Maybe a little bit, but he's having fun, so not too much to criticise, really. The use of the chorus, as I said, is very good. Maybe needs to grow on me a little bit, but overall I do enjoy Caesar Rock. And then we move on to the first sort of epic song on the album. It's one of those that goes through multiple stages. It's a bit like Band on the Run in that sense. And it's called Despite Repeated Warnings. It's about 6.5 minutes long, and I have to be totally honest, you know, whenever, obviously with records and CDs you don't get this, but whenever it's on my phone, you can see how long's left. And I see the next song pop up, and I see 6.5 minutes, and I think, oh god, please let this be good, or at least interesting. And thankfully this is, and it's probably the most political he gets on the album. He's talking, as he said in the is it words between the songs or something. He said it's sort of about climate change and how there are certain politicians who deny climate change, mentioning no names at all. Yeah, it's about, sort of... It's quite a scary message, I think, this song. It's about seeing that there's danger ahead, but not being able to do anything about it because the guy who's at the wheel doesn't care. And I think it's a really interesting song. He said he took the title from, was it a newspaper clipping or something, despite repeated warnings. He really liked that phrase, and so do I. Is it worthy of 6.5 minutes? Yes, I think it is worthy of 6.5 minutes because it doesn't just stay the same like a lot of songs do. It gets to about 2.5 minutes in, I think, and then it picks up. It starts out quite piano-driven, despite repeated warnings, da-da-da-da. Then it kicks in and it's like, what can we do to stop him? Stuff like that. It really changes around the halfway point and it keeps the song fresh, and then you get some horns later on, and it turns from being quite haunting and it's meaningful all the way through, but particularly the opening is very poignant, and then it sort of descends into this manic what can we do about it thing, which I think it's a great song. It's very creative, and yeah, I pretty much like everything about this song. It's very inventive. I think he's great for doing that, where he thinks, right, if I'm going to make a song over like 4.5 minutes long, I need to do something in the middle to make it interesting. And he does. I think, if I remember rightly, towards the end, like the last bit, it goes back down to piano, but that middle section really sort of carries it, through the sort of 4 or 5 minute mark, keeps you interested, and I think the meaning behind the song is very, very interesting, and I think it's a great subject for a song. As much as maybe politics... should I say this? I think politics and music do mix. I think you can be political in songwriting, but I don't think you can do it without alienating at least some of your audience. But that's a risk he seems to be willing to take, and yeah, I think it works quite well. Next we get to the penultimate song, which is Station 2. Similarly with Opening Station, I think maybe this is just put in to make it feel like a concept album when it's not really, to make the title make sense and make it feel like a journey. Although I do prefer this... I prefer Station 2 to Opening Station. That was a mouthful. Because, you get the sort of ambient noise of a train station, and then you hear this sort of guitar riff slowly come up sort of from being quiet to prominent, and then it kicks into the next song, and I think that's a really cool way to introduce the next song. It's like someone there has plugged a guitar in and they've started playing at this station. Really cool stuff. And then it leads into the last song, which is a medley. Again, it's like 6 and a bit minutes. And it's of 3 movements called Hunt You Down, Naked, and Ceiling. And yeah, it's a strange one. It's for me, it sort of does like the opposite of a bell curve, where it starts out great, the middle is a bit iffy, and then towards the end it improves again. Hunt You Down is the rockiest, hardest part of this album. The riff is like really hard rock. He's properly having fun coming up with that riff, and there's distorted vocals and everything make it sound really rough and ready. The song, in terms of its meaning, is nothing too special, I don't think. Again, he's singing about a woman, but what's new? But it's really the melody of this song that takes it. It's really catchy and upbeat, and that portion of the song only lasts like 2.5 to 3 minutes, I think, so it's impossible to get bored of a song that catchy that quick. So yeah, really strong start. And then it goes into the bit called Naked, which maybe it'll grow on me, but the 2 times I've listened to it, I've sort of felt like it was a bit of a slouch in the middle of the song. A bit bland in terms of its sound. Its meaning's quite nice, I suppose, but it doesn't really keep your interest too long. Thankfully, it's not a big portion of the song. It only lasts a couple of minutes. But yeah, I feel like had that been worked on, it could have been a good standalone song, but as it is, it was maybe just an unfinished scrap, sort of Abbey Road medley style, that found its way into the middle. And it works, it's passable, but, maybe a little bit bland. And then we finish off with Ceiling, which he said was just him playing on the guitar. There was an orchestra in the background holding a C note or was it C minor, and he was just sort of doing a bluesy little twang on the guitar, and that sort of closes out the album. Yeah, not too much to say about this one. It's not got any lyrics, so there's not meaning behind it really. It's an alright listen. I think it's a nice close out to the album. It starts and finishes in the same way, the album that is. It starts quite slow and it finishes quite slow, you know, which works as a sort of album structure. It's not traditional, which, you know, when has Paul ever been traditional? But yeah, C-Link I think is quite a nice little way to close off the album. It's quite menacing, I think. I don't know, I just think the mix of the orchestra just holding that one note and then him slowly coming in with guitar licks. I don't know, I found it quite menacing and sinister, but maybe that's just me, I don't know. So yeah, that's what ends the album. Well, him going woo ends the album, which is quite a sort of a nice touch. So yeah, that's basically my track-by-track thoughts. Again, I'm sorry if I couldn't give much in the way of detail, but it is just my second listen and I really wanted to make a video purely because this album is so interesting. I think the main thing to note about this album is that it is Paul doing exactly what he wants and making the music that he wants to make. And I think that when an artist has the freedom to make the music they want to make, that is when their most interesting stuff comes out. Doesn't always work, you know. You only have to look at like John Lennon and Yoko Ono's, what was it, Unfinished Music albums, and you know, it doesn't always make for a great listen. Maybe it's cathartic for them, I don't know, but yeah, when an artist has full freedom to make exactly what they want, a lot of the times interesting stuff comes out. That is why a lot of the times with singles from the 60s and 70s, the A-side was very radio friendly, the B-side was often more interesting, I thought. Yeah, and I think, you know, he's reached the stage now where he's like, you know what, I'm Paul McCartney, like, I'm not just going to do what people tell me to do. And, you know, a couple of the songs on here maybe could have done with a bit of input from other people, a bit of guidance. But the thing that comes across for me mainly is just how much fun he's having making this album. And, you know, he's had fun making it and I had a lot of fun listening to it, so what more could you ask for from an album? Strange structure, like I said, it starts slow and ends slow, which is a strange thing. Usually it's sort of black, white, you know, fast, slow. Not like that at all. Like, there's not too many upbeat rocker songs on here. But I think a lot of people were expecting Egypt Station to be quite... do I want to say the phrase acting his age? I don't know. I think a lot of people want him to follow in the footsteps of the likes of Robert Plant, where, you know, he had his youth when he was all, you know, drug, sex and rock and roll and Led Zeppelin and all that stuff, but now he's sort of mellowed out and he's, you know, just acting his age basically. But I don't think Paul is going to do that anytime soon. Could it backfire? Possibly. Would I like an acoustic, slow, nice, mellow, chilled out album from him? Yeah, I would, but Egypt Station is a perfectly passable, serviceable album in my opinion. Is it his best? Probably not. Is it his worst? Definitely not. Anyways, I'm going to close out this video now. I've got no idea how long this has been. I've been filming for 50 minutes, so I really hope the video is not that long. But yeah, I enjoyed this album. If you have heard it, let me know what you think in the comments. The cat is about to jump on the bed. If you haven't heard it, go and listen to it and let me know what you think in the comments. What I would say is, if you didn't like the singles, please go into it with an open mind. Please stop playing with my notes. Yeah, go into it with an open mind. You know, the singles do not represent this album at all. And if you did like the singles, then, you know, there's some better songs on the album, so look forward to them. But that's it. That's it from me. Like I said in the video previously to this, I probably won't be on YouTube for a little while unless something interesting like this happens. For goodness sake. Yeah, I probably won't be too present on YouTube over the next couple of months, but I'll be back in November making my usual stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and enjoy Egypt Station. See you soon.